everybody. Welcome to the first episode of Single Player SaaS. Now, this is a new podcast I'm starting. You may be familiar with some of the other work I've done with like Ruby Rogues or JavaScript Jabber. I'm pretty excited about this, and I just want to kind of dive in and explain what the show's about and what my background is on this stuff. I'm also live streaming this on Twitter and Twitch and YouTube. So if you're interested in picking some of those up, I'll be live streaming them as I do them. But anyway, I just wanted to really kind of get going in and talk a little bit about what this podcast is, what it's about, and like I said, what my background is. So let's get this started. Now, I was looking at recently where I want things to go, right? So if you're familiar with the other shows that I mentioned, I've been podcasting since 2008, right? And I did some screencast series before that, and have talked a lot about programming and things like that. And as I've kind of gotten deeper and deeper into programming and web development, and mostly in Ruby on Rails, I really realized that there's kind of a direction that I wanted to go, right? For a long time, it was just, hey, I want to make podcasts about programming and cover technology and things like that. But as I got deeper and deeper into it, I realized that there are some things that I've always wanted to do that I've just never actually been able to get around to doing. And one of them is to build a successful SaaS product. But the other thing is over the years of doing the podcast, I've realized that I really, really love helping people kind of take their career from where they are to that next level. Right. And so I kept seeing, okay, this is the chance to kind of pull stuff together and help people. And initially, as I got into things and started thinking about how to help people, I was going to do some coaching, right? It was going to be career coaching and, hey, why don't you try this, or, start a podcast for this and things like that. And what I found was, for the most part, I'd have a handful of people sign up for the coaching, and effectively what they wanted to do was start a podcast. They'd want to put it up on YouTube, and then, after they got rolling, then they'd cancel the rest of their coaching. And so, because they got what they wanted, they just launched their podcast. And so I am working on some podcast launch related stuff. But the other thing I realized is that there are a lot of services out there that I've been trying to use over the years to make the podcast run that I just don't love. Right now, it's not really their fault. A lot of these tools are actually set up primarily for people to use in a more general sense. They're not tailored or tuned to podcast or podcasting. And so I thought, okay, well, I'll build some of these on my own. And that led me to, okay, well, then I need to build SaaS products. And I've built other stuff before, right? I built an RSS feed manager. I never completely fully launched it. I used it for a long time to host the RSS feeds for the podcasts that I manage, but the issue that I ran into was just marketing it, right? I just never quite got around to marketing it. And I think if I finished it and put it out there, people would use it, right? And then I could just go out to the podcasting conferences and stuff like that and say, hey, look, this will do all the things that you wish you could do with your RSS feeds. And kind of break that down and get people to sign up. But there are other things like managing hosts and guests and, making that all work. Essentially what I have to do is I have to go in and I have to spin Zapier's head around a couple times in order to get it to do exactly what I want with notifying guests of stuff coming up, notifying the hosts, putting stuff together so that we can collaborate. I've tried using social media, or kind of targeted social media forum stuff like Discord or Circle, and that really hasn't worked. And I feel like a lot of that's follow up, but those tools don't really lend themselves to that. So people would sign up for the service or sign up for the podcast episode, and then it would invite them to the podcast and send the calendar invites to everybody else. But then, figuring out those pieces to the rest of it was just kind of hard. The other part of my background that I feel like is relevant to this conversation is, so when I graduated from college, I got a job at a software as a service company called Mozy. And what Mozy did is they did online backup. And so if, people would sign up for the service. They'd install the client on their computer, and then they would say, I need all these things backed up, and it would copy all those files up to the cloud, right? And I don't need to go into how it all worked, but my job was doing support, technical support for those people. And prior to that, I'd been a systems administrator for Windows and Linux servers, and so I was familiar enough with how all that stuff came together that I could troubleshoot Windows over the phone, right? Oh, go into the registry and change this stuff, right? And so I felt like I was pretty good at that, but I really loved working on a service that people could use to make their life better. And as I've gotten deeper and deeper into podcasting, I'm realizing that there are a lot of things that could go a lot more easily for podcasters. And so that's kind of the direction that I want to head in at this point is building out software as a service for podcasters. So I got in the other I'm going to back up just for a second because there was another SaaS company that I worked for. So I went from there to working for actually two. I worked for a consultancy. So I got out of technical support, got hired as a consultancy, built Rails apps there for a little while. The one application that I built was kind of a phone. It was back when flip phones were kind of the thing rather than smartphones. And so you could text in and it was all text-based stuff for meeting people and marketing and stuff like that. Worked on that until they quit paying my employer, and then I got moved to another project. That was more of a directory, right? Kind of a download.com clone. But after I worked there, I got hired building. Oh wait, I guess there were another one in the middle of that. So I got hired at a company that did lead generation. So we built a system that managed all of the lead pages and then also managed all of the leads, right? So that wasn't so much a software as a service, but it's in the same vein, right? Because it provided that internal service for the company. And then finally, I went and worked for a company called Public Engines, and they had a website called crimereports.com. The crimereports.com is now out again, but it's not the company I worked for, and it's not the code base I worked on. But what they did is their software as a service, their marketing arm was essentially crimereports.com. And so it would put crime data out. Well, the way they got the crime data was they would get the police agencies and other law enforcement agencies to submit their crime data to them. And then they would give them analytics on the data, right? So that was the service that they provided through the software. And then, they provided all of the other stuff on the front end. And I'm not going to go into all of the things that went on there, but I really loved working on products that made things better for people, whether it was law enforcement agencies or grandmas that don't want to lose the pictures of their grandkids, right? And so you've got kind of this element of serving people. And honestly, the people that I enjoy serving are podcasters and programmers. So, I'm looking at it and I'm going, okay, well, how can I make things easier for myself? And how can I use that to make things easier for other podcasters? Right. And so I built the feed management thing because I needed it and I wanted it, and it made things a lot better for me in particular. And I think there's still some space for that. A lot of the hosting companies actually provide you with a feed. But as I get deeper and deeper into the feed management, what I'm finding is that I want to do podcasting 2.0, which means that I have to add other tags to my feed, and they don't provide the mechanism to do that. And so what I'm looking to do is kind of proxy the feeds. But the other thing is I'd like to divvy them out. So if you tag a feed, so if I tag a feed as beginner, or if I tag a feed as, learn to program or careers, right? Because our shows are very technology centric, right? With Ruby and Rails, or, what other technologies, JavaScript or React, right? But if we have a deployment focused show or something like that, right, I could tag it as DevOps or whatever, right? And so then you could get the top end devs careers feed, right, if you're only interested in the career stuff, or if you want the career stuff that comes in on the other shows that you don't listen to as much. So maybe you're a Rails and React, so you're listening to Ruby Rogues, React Roundup, and JavaScript Jabber. But if they have a deep conversation on careers on Elixir Mix, right, maybe you're interested in that. So anyway, that's kind of where I'm looking. And then, some of the other things like the guest management, things like that. I love the idea of SaaS and SaaS models. I love the idea of building something out. And so I started to get into, okay, well, what do I need to do in order to provide a software as a service that people can use and want to use? And there were these other products that I was thinking of, and then also the Top End Devs code base can easily be adapted to other podcasts and podcasting setups, right? So somebody else who has a podcast, they could migrate their stuff in, and then they can provide courses and things like that, right? So I'm looking at all these, and as I started looking at them, I realized that there was a whole bunch of stuff that I had to build in that didn't really have to do with podcast guests or RSS feeds or things like that, right? And as I was doing that, I also had the opportunity in October, right, when I was really getting serious about, okay, what direction do I want to take this, and how do I want to help people progress? I went to Rails World in Amsterdam, and as I was sitting in the keynote done by David Heinemeier Hansen, or DHH as we all call him in the Rails world, um, he was talking about all the features that they're adding to Rails to make it a one person framework, is the way he put it, right? So it's, one person can get in and they can reasonably build out features in without taking a ton of time. And I was like, this is awesome, right? So I can build in the features that I want. I can make things do the things I want, and I can use something like Ruby on Rails to build it out. And as I started to dig into it, I realized that, well, if Ruby on Rails is the one person web framework, then why can't we give people all of the pieces that they need to make it the one person SaaS framework? Now, granted, there are some other templates out there that it's like, hey, this is your SaaS template, right? And so they have payment management and they have user management and they have, some of these other features that are built into the template. But what I'm finding is as I talk to people, there's usually a higher learning curve. You kind of have to all or nothing adopt the whole thing, right? And then you can start pulling pieces out of it. It's like, okay, I'm going to use this authentication library instead of that one. I'm going to use this authorization scheme instead of that one. And what I want is I want things that work seamlessly together that you can just deploy a piece at a time, right? So it's like, okay, I need user management, or maybe I know I need user management and permission management and, a couple of other features, subscription management and things like that, that all kind of tie together nicely. And so, you would get that out of the template, but you can just get those by saying, I just want to adopt all the pieces that go together. And right. And so I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, okay, this is cool stuff. And I really like selling this stuff. I also talked to Amir Rajan, who built Dragon Ruby. And as I was talking to him about some of the payment and other pieces, he was saying that would have been nice when he was launching Dragon Ruby, because he sells licenses one at a time, right? So usually software as a service is a subscription based business, but even just selling a single license or a single course or things like that, I could see, okay, what can I provide to people where they can adopt it, a piece at a time, and get a lot of these pieces out of the way. And so I was like, okay, I'll start pulling this stuff together and I'll start putting it into a package, and we'll start selling this stuff that I'm building, and just say, okay, look, include, the SaaS toolkit, one piece at a time into your Rails app in the gem file, and then bundle it in and, install it. And then you can work on it from there. And I also started to realize at the same time that there were a couple of pieces to this that I didn't quite know, like, what to price it at, right? And I can go look at what other people are pricing the templates at and things like that, and I can get an idea of probably what I can charge. The other thing is running it and hiring people to do support, and all of the other things that go into it, how to market it, how to do a launch. And so as I'm diving into all these different things, I'm realizing, what, I know a lot of people who know these pieces, and if I'm doing some of the content and pieces like that, right? So I know how to do a podcast, I know how to sell things on the podcast, I know how to put things together there, right? So I do have expertise there, and as I said, I have a lot of background with a bunch of my clients, and then with some of my past employers, that I know how to build a SaaS and I know how to build the pieces that go into it. And so I really can single player a lot of this stuff. I mean, it'd be nice to have some help. It'd be nice to, have somebody else helping with some of the pieces. But at the end of the day, what if I want to do this and do this on my own and pull all the pieces together and make it work? And so that's where the idea of single player SaaS came on, was I can go and I can talk to the people who are good at the pieces that I'm not, right? It's like, okay, how do I do the launch or maybe a Kickstarter campaign or, whatever else is out there, right? How can I put something together for the the product that I want to build, or how do I build out the thing that I need and then market it to other people, right? Whatever the approach is, and then also get their take on just kind of some of the stuff that they've been through in general. So, to give an example, yesterday I talked to Ben Curtis, who's one of the founders of honeybadger.io, which is what I use to monitor errors and things like that. They also just barely added insights, which is I can send my logs up to them and then they'll give me more information about what's going on in my app. Right. And so I just asked him all my questions, right? It's like, hey, how did you get started? And what did you run into? And what should I know? And what should I do? And what should I not do? And how do I price it? And all of those different questions, right? So that'll come out a week after this. But just getting into that and going, okay, how do I build a real business, right? If I'm a programmer and I have an idea and I have some idea of what I want to build, whether you've been validating the idea or it's something that you think you need, or you're building a showcase app or something else, how do I build this out? And then how do I make it a success, right? How do I get to the point where, hey, look, I can pay all my bills and I can take care of all the things I need in order to, make a real go of this, right? Um, and so, yeah, so that's the deal. That's what I'm excited about. That's what I want to help people with. And so, I'm putting this together, and then, I'll mention the toolkit for Rails periodically, right? It's like, hey, go check out railscomposer.com, and you can go get the thing. Railscomposer.com will be up in a bit. Um, but yeah, and then I'll probably also mention I'm looking at putting together a mastermind for people who are looking to build a SaaS product, and then we will do some blend of having experts come in and help us with specific things, and then getting on and setting goals and targets and holding each other accountable and helping each other navigate some of this stuff that we have to navigate. But the primary focus of this is going to be on my journey and learning how to build SaaS products from where I'm at, and I feel like I bring a lot of the technical expertise and experience that way. But then also, yeah, to help bolster those areas where I and others may need a little bit of help. And so, anyway, all that said, yeah, welcome to the Single Player SaaS podcast. If you're interested, like I said, in either the toolkit or the mastermind, go to railscomposer.com. I should have that up here pretty quick. If you're watching this on the live feed or watching it after I put it out there, that's where that's you'll pick it up before Rails Composer is out. I plan on actually hosting this podcast on railscomposer.com. So, if you're listening to it, otherwise you're going to see links to railscomposer.com/podcast/whatever. And that's going to be where I'm talking more and more about this stuff. And yeah, it'll be a blend. It'll be, okay, here's technical advice on building out your user portal, right? And we'll talk about some of the things I'm building into Rails Composer. But if you're using Laravel or whatever, Next.js, great, fine. Maybe we'll have some services on that do some of this stuff, and have somebody from that service get on and say, hey, if you're building a membership site, use our product, xyzproduct.com, right? And that way maybe you can skip some of this stuff a different way. But my ultimate goal with this is to help people figure out how to build a software as a service product without having to have 6 people on your team to do it, right? What if you're just going to solo it, or as the technical person, because those are primarily the people I talk to. Or maybe if you're the technical person and you have a non-technical co-founder, right, then how do you figure that out? Or if there are 2 of you that are technical and one of you is taking on some of the technical roles and some of the non-technical roles, and then the other of you is taking on some of the technical and non-technical roles, right? But you can figure out what the strategy is. You can have conversations about it within your organization if 2, 3, 4 people, right? And then kind of build it from there. So I'm really focused on kind of that single developer person, but I realize that a lot of this content is going to be it's going to make sense for a lot of other people. So anyway, that's what I'm putting out there. Come check us out at railscomposer.com. And until next time, Max out.